Welcome to Wayward Addictions, where we have honest conversations about addiction, mental health, and recovery. By sharing your story, you can provide encouragement to those who may be feeling lost, hopeless, or helpless. In this episode, I'm going to open up about the secrets and darkness of my own addiction. It won't be easy, but if I can inspire just one person, it'll be worth it. Okay, I need you all to understand, pointing fingers at anyone. I fully own my choices in my life's path. Okay, so let's get into it. I was raised in a single parent home where my mom worked hard to give my sisters and me a stable life. I'm the oldest of us three. We weren't rich, but she made sure our basic needs were always met. Mom had me at 16 and my sisters shortly after, so that meant she was often busy with working, which she worked about an hour away, which limited our time together. My mom also struggled with her issues related to alcohol and drugs, which further strained her relationship with us. We stayed most weekends with our dad, who was an alcoholic and abusive to our stepmom. I rarely remember seeing Dad sober while growing up. Even though our childhood was a mess, I still loved my parents very much. And in the seventh grade, I started sneaking out almost every night during the week to hang out with my friends and some of my parents' party buddies. They would get us high and drunk. And honestly, I can't recall how I managed to get back home and into bed before Mom got home. The wild part was I never did get caught. My poor mom must have been at her wit's end with me. I drove her nuts by getting kicked out of school, drinking, skipping class, and just being completely out of control. At 16, I talked Mom into letting me marry a man 6 years older than me. Not knowing what else to do, she signed for us to marry, and that's when hell came rushing in for me. We hadn't been messing around for maybe a month tops, but he agreed to marry me. I thought this was my escape. I'd be able to do whatever I wanted to do. Boy, that was a lie. 2 months into our marriage, I found out I was pregnant with my first daughter. I decided to stop drinking and using drugs for the sake of my baby. Sadly, my husband was abusive and isolated me from my family. We lived with his mom, and I could only go out if she accompanied me. He was constantly putting me down, calling me names, never saying anything nice. Whenever he would hurt me physically, not one family member came to my defense. He took away any self-esteem I had left. After 3 tumultuous years of marriage, my husband was sent to the penitentiary on criminal charges, drugs, presenting me with an opportunity to finally get out with our young daughter, free from the constant fear of him hunting us down. So we moved in with my mom. And within a few months, I met the man who would become my second husband. Our whirlwind romance led to the birth of my second daughter, but the marriage ultimately unraveled and ended in divorce several years later. I found myself in a new relationship and unexpectedly pregnant again with my third child. The relationship showed promise initially, and we had a couple of good years together. However, infidelity on both of our parts tore us apart. In a moment of weakness, I cheated with a man who I later discovered was a raging alcoholic and a meth head. Though it took me a few weeks to uncover the depths of his substance abuse issues, what started as an infatuation spiraled into a devastating addiction that shattered my entire existence. Blinded by my feelings for this man, I willingly followed him down a path of self-destruction. Drinking, succumbing to the lure of meth. In a mere 2 months, my life completely unraveled. My world torn to shreds by the grip of addiction. Desperate for our next high, he coerced me into degrading myself. Started turning tricks with the very dealers who supplied our poison. The price I paid was immeasurable. I lost custody of my precious daughters, the light of my life extinguished by the darknesses of my choice. Drowning in despair and consumed by guilt, I plummeted into a bottomless pit of suicidal depression. My spirit felt broken, and my desire to continue living was nearly gone. It felt like my life was a series of poor choices, each one leading me deeper into a pit of despair. The grip of depression and addiction was suffocating. It left me feeling isolated and dead in spirit. Isolating myself from my loved ones was one of the most painful and lonely experiences of my life. I felt so lost and so disconnected from the people who cared about me the most. Back then, getting professional help and entering a real rehabilitation program wasn't nearly as available as it is today. Treatment options were limited, and there was still so much stigma and misunderstanding surrounding addiction and mental health struggles, that it wasn't talked about, just not in my family at least. Of course, my meth addiction got worse. One night, he had a couple of his buddies over, and we're sitting around and smoking meth. Then, like a flick of a switch, he grabbed me and started beating me in the face. I had 2 black eyes and probably a broken nose. I thought for sure he was going to kill me. His buddies, they just left me begging them to help me. They just split. There I was alone with this monster who just kept hitting me, and I thought I was going to die that night. The next day, he walked to his mom's down the street, and as soon as he hit pavement, buddy, I started running the other way. Maybe a quarter mile down the street, a guy picked me up. He tried to talk me into going to the hospital. Of course, I wouldn't. He asked where he could take me. I told him I didn't have anywhere to go, and he could just drop me off anywhere. He offered to let me stay the night, and I accepted the invite. Where else was I going to go? I stayed with this total stranger that night. This guy had to be an angel from God. He just held me while I bawled like a baby. He let me shower. He fed me. And he even let me have his bed that night while he slept on the couch. I tried to keep from falling asleep, worried that this stranger might be waiting to catch me off guard so he could hurt me. Eventually, I found with exhaustion, I fell asleep, and that was the first time I slept in peace, and I couldn't tell you how long. I have never had a man be so kind towards me without wanting something in return. I let so much evil into my life that I didn't know there was any way for me to get out. I was in abusive relationships, one right after another, and if I did run into a decent man in my brokenness, I didn't think I deserved him, so I would mess it up somehow. Then the pill mill epidemic happened, and I got caught up in all that mess. I stopped drinking and had a new love come into town named Xanax and Coke. Seems I just couldn't get it right. But I will say the pill business took off, and it seemed like everyone I knew was on painkillers. Of course, I couldn't afford to go to these clinics. I was a strung-out addict, so the dope dealers started paying for my clinic visits and prescriptions. In return, I would get some of the pills I was still dating, air quotes, to take care of my coke habit. Before long, I got caught for trafficking and did some time in jail. I got out on parole a long while later and walked the rest of my sentence off. In turn, I found myself clean for the first time since I had been a preteen. I stayed clean for quite a few years and started picking up my life piece by piece. I got a full-time job. My own little apartment as a single woman, and I got a used vehicle. I was so happy and so proud of how far I had come. Dating was still something I was terrified of, because we know that I am a sucker for the bad boys. But unfortunately, that didn't last. I worked nights as a cashier at a gas station right down the street from my apartment and walked a handsome, charming man who asked me out every time he came in. I kept saying no. My life was going so good, and I wasn't ready for another relationship, nor did I have any faith in men anymore. After a few months, I finally agreed to go on a date with him. For the first couple of months, everything went great between us, but gradually I started slipping back into old habits. He began drinking occasionally when we visit his friends for cookouts, and we play horseshoes, badminton, and just, enjoy the outdoor games. At first, it seemed innocent enough, I guess. Just a beer here and there, nothing too extreme. After a few months, I moved him in with me. Everything went good for a month or so. But during this time, he never offered to help with groceries or bills. I knew he was working. He would stay gone all day and sometimes half the night. He came home late one night, dog-faced drunk. I was upset, but decided it wouldn't do either of us any good to talk about it while he was so drunk. So the next chance we got to be home from work, that I would talk to him then about it with helping me with the bills. We had supper that night and then settled on the couch to stream a movie. I made us a bowl of popcorn and snuggled up to him, and we started the movie. I thought it would be the perfect time to have a conversation. I pondered over what to say and began to ask him if he could lend a hand with the groceries and bills. The anger that flashed on his face was something I'd never seen before from him, leaving me completely taken back. You don't want me here. Why bring this up now? I'm tired from working all day. I'll effing give you some money next payday, was his reply. Needless to say, he never gave me a cent to help out. The fights got worse. He started destroying my furniture when we'd argue. He put his hands on me a couple of times, but nothing like I had experienced in the past. Not to give him any credit, he always turned his faults back onto me. I was always in the wrong. No one but him would ever put up with a woman like me. He was just so nasty and so mean to me. I couldn't understand how everything could have flipped just that fast. The stress of home was so awful that I started drinking heavily again. We'd fight and leave for a few days and then come back crying. I'll change, blah, blah, blah. We can go back to how it used to be. Of course, I'd take him right back every time. A couple of months later, my daughter had her baby girl, so she moved in with us. She was dealing with a lot at the time, too. I quit drinking again for their sake. One night, my daughter had gone out, and I watched the baby for her. Everything was good, you know. He said he was going to go visit his uncle for a bit. No big deal. He gave me alone time with this little cutie pie. Around 1, he came in, stumbling around and just being loud. I ignored it, snuggled up to the baby, and ended up falling asleep. He came into our room sometime later on that morning, kissing me and rubbing all over me, and I told him no, I have the baby in here. Of course, that led to a fight. He never hit me, but he spit in my face. I was so disgusted. I think I would have rather had him hit me than put up with the mental abuse. That's so sad that anyone should ever have to feel that way. Anyway, I just gave up, went into the living room and let him have his way. I cried the whole time, but it didn't even bother him. I went to work the next day, and the store manager called me into her office. She showed me a video of my boyfriend stealing while I was working. She said she didn't see that I had seen him, but she couldn't take the risk of keeping me, so of course she fired me. I felt such a heavy weight on me right then. My world came crashing down once again. When I left the store, I went to the park and cried and cried. I had this baby who was dependent on me, an apartment with no way to pay rent, and now I didn't have a job. That night I packed up all his stuff and set it out on the front porch. When he came in, I told him I got fired and he was the reason. He twisted it all on me, but I no longer cared what he had to say. I was done. I was just done. He stayed in the apartment while I was selling everything I had to try and make 1 more month's rent. If I could pay 1 more month's rent, maybe I could find another job and keep my apartment. Almost everything I owned didn't even cover a month's rent. He never offered a penny, not a sorry, not a nothing. He just ignored me for the following weeks, like I didn't even exist in my own home. When I did lose the apartment, he just took off. Here I was with a baby, no job, not a clue what to do. After sleeping in my truck for a few nights with this baby, I swallowed my pride and asked my mom if we could come and stay with her until I got back on my feet. Things were never good with Mom, so that hit hard when I asked. If it had been only me, no way would I have asked, but I couldn't let this sweet baby go without because of my pride. She let us move in, considering the differences we had. After a couple of weeks at Mom's, I finally found a temp job in the next town over. I put an ad for a small apartment on Facebook Marketplace, and an elderly man reached out and rented me a 3-bedroom house with 2 full baths for cheaper than I had paid for my apartment. I was beyond happy. I was blessed. I swore off drugs again that day. Everything was starting to look up. I started a small house cleaning service. Work, home, and my grandbaby were my focus for months. A man from my past reached out when he found I moved back home. We hung out occasionally and then almost daily. He wasn't sober and clean, so that it started affecting my sobriety. I started the pain pills again. I would say for maybe a couple of months. It terrified me, so I told him, I really like you, but if you want to be with me, the drinking and drugs need to go. We found a program together and have been clean for the last 8 years. Now we have a great relationship, mutual respect and honesty, something that I've never had. Was he my savior? No. Only I could do that, so I did. Quitting drugs was simple yet hard. For what came next, I had to face everyone I loved with sober eyes, especially my 3 beautiful girls, even though they were adults now. The very people I had hurt for years. The guilt ate at me then, and it still does sometimes. But now I take it one step at a time. That's all you can do, right? For many years I believed that I either needed someone to rescue me, or that I could be the one to rescue someone else. However, I've come to understand that saving others is not my responsibility. It's a journey that must undertake themselves. Throughout my life, I've known many wonderful individuals who tragically succumbed to addiction or took their own lives because of it. Addiction is relentless and affects anyone, regardless of their background. A quote I discovered a few years back resonates deeply with me. Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life. J.K. Rowling. This perfectly encapsulates my experience with addiction, as well as that of many others. If you or someone close to you is battling addiction or mental health issues, please know that you don't have to go through it alone. Reach out for help, whether it's confiding in a trusted friend or a family member, calling a helpline, researching treatment programs in your area. I'll also be sharing some statewide resources that I offer compassionate, judgment-free support and the guidance on the path to healing and recovery in the show notes. If you still can't find help or need someone to help, reach out to me, and I will do my best to help. We'd love to hear your story on our show, whether you're sharing your personal experience with an addiction or being a loved one of an addict, or want to discuss the broader impact of addiction, please email me. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you'd like to share your story on wayward addictions, just send us an email and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. We're excited to continue building a supportive, close-knit community. We can't wait to connect with you again soon.